All right, so again, following the directions in the assignment to create a mock house. So as with all good 3D models, we're going to start with a sketch. So clicking the Create Sketch tool. Obviously, we got these three default planes that we can sketch on. Those are kind of our starting points when we're creating a brand new design file. I'm going to start with the bottom profile of the house, work my way up. So I'm going to select this flat plane that corresponds with the top plane of this little view cube. I'm going to rotate around until I'm looking at that top plane, and I'm going to make a rectangle. Now, as I go through this stuff, I'm going to start using some of the keyboard shortcuts rather than having to click on these little menu items. So I'm just going to hit R on my keyboard, and that is the shortcut tool for creating a rectangle. I'm actually going to do one extra thing. I'm going to go over here to this little sketch palette. And here you have a whole bunch of options for fine-tuning what you're sketching. But what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to select this center rectangle. I'm going to click this center origin point and make a rectangle. And as we've talked about before, that'll anchor your sketch so that it is stuck on that origin point. All right, let me make this rectangle the correct size. So I need to use the dimension tool to make this thing the correct size. You can find that in the Create menu, or you can just hit D on your keyboard, and that'll automatically pull up this dimension tool. So let's make this house 60 millimeters along this direction. We'll make it 40 millimeters along this direction. So to correctly size lines, with that dimension tool selected, all you got to do is click the line, go over to the side to click. You can type in whatever specific measurements you need. And so that is enough for the base of the house. To make that three-dimensional, when your sketch is finished, your toolbar turns back to the 3D Features toolbar. I'm going to click Extrude, and I'm just going to drag this up. Let me type in 30 millimeters, so I'm being relatively precise about how thick I'm making that 3D body. Click OK, and now we've got that basic 3D shape. The rest of this assignment is adding features that make it look kind of like a toy house. So things like doors, windows, maybe add a roof to it. And we talked about some of those things yesterday, or last week. So for example, if I wanted to hollow this out so I could actually have an inside to this house, that's where some of the tools from this modify menu are going to be handy to use. And so I'm going to grab this shell tool, click that bottom surface of your house. You can drag that arrow, or you can type in a specific measurement, and that will hollow out the inside of your design. Very useful feature for a lot of different things. Let me add a roof to this. Tell you what, I'm going to do something extra fancy. I'm going to show you some symmetry features with my extrude tool. What I want to do for this roof that I'm going to design, I want to sketch on that sketching plane that's in the center of my box that I just made here. But that's obstructed from view. So I'm going to go up here in this browser menu and click the little drop-down arrow next to bodies. I'm going to click the little eyeball symbol to hide my house. That'll get the 3D body out of the way. Let me click one of these surfaces. And then, of course, I can go back in here and unhide this body. And so what I've got is a new sketch created. So the first sketch was just making that box for the house. The second sketch is going to be my roof sketch. Now, this second sketch doesn't know anything about my original sketch. I made it in one of the default planes. There's no reference for, where the different parts of my designs are. I could go in here and click all kinds of like lines and stuff and try to get that relatively accurate. But if I'm making like a roof for this house, I probably want that to sit on top of this little rectangle. And so I need to know where the top of this rectangle is located. There's a relatively simple to use tool to do that called the project tool. You can find the project tool from the Create menu towards the bottom, but it's got a keyboard shortcut P. So I'm just going to hit P on my keyboard, and I want to know where the profile of this house is. So I'm going to click this front face. Let me click OK on the project tool. And if I hide this body, I've now got a little rectangle that is projected into my current sketch. That's taken those features of that 3D object that I made and added lines and curves and whatever else it needs to represent that object in my sketch. And with that, it makes it pretty easy to add something that looks like a roof. Now, my roof needs some thickness to it. So I could, because I want to extrude the roof to actually make that roof look three-dimensional. Now I could create another set of lines to represent the outside edge of that roof. But again, if you start exploring some of the different tools available to you in that create menu or even in that modify menu, there are going to be things that are going to be useful to making your life a little bit easier. For example, this little offset tool, if I click a line, you can kind of see what that's done. It's taken that line and copied it so that it's offset from my original object. I'm going to go in and add some lines here to close up the edges of this little roof that I made. And that way I have a selectable profile that I can use to create my roof. So let me unhide my body. I'm going to select my extrude tool and start making a roof for my house. Hey, there we go. Now, normally we'd extrude this in one direction. But there are other ways of creating extrudes and other 3D features. If you take a look at this little menu that pops up when I try to create that 3D feature. What we've played around with so far is a one-sided extrude. If you click that little drop-down box, though, drop-down box there, there is other options for how you make that extrude. So I could make this symmetric. And you can see what that's done. That's taken my sketch profile in the center and stretched it in one direction and the other direction, keeping that sketch profile centered around my sketch. So very handy feature. Let me add an attic to this little house. So let me extrude that. I'm going to grab that symmetric tool again. There we go. Hey, now I've got a house. All right. Let me hide my sketches. And then from here, it is up to you to make some interesting features for this house. You can create sketches, not just on those three default planes, but you could click the actual side of an object. Any flat side of an object can be used to create a sketch. So we can create a sketch for something like a door. I could create a sketch for a window. Maybe I want to make this even fancier and let me draw some center lines. Grab my center rectangle. I'm going to make some sills for my window. Well, the level of detail you get to with your house may be dependent on what your skill level is, but see what you can get done by the end of class. Obviously, it's going to take a little more involved design work to model a realistic house, but you can make something that looks passable with just some of the basic tools we've talked about. So now I've got a sketch for a window and a door directly on the side of that house. Things like the extrude tool can be used for more than just adding 3D thickness to an object. It can also be used to cut away from an object. If you look under that little drop-down box towards the bottom of the extrude window, it says operation. A couple different things we can do with that extrude. Join is going to take your extrude and add it to an existing 3D body. Cut is going to do kind of the opposite of that. It's going to cut away or remove material based on the direction you extrude to. And then there are other features like intersect. New body will create a new separate, distinct 3D body. And we'll talk a little bit more about components in the future. But for right now, I just want to cut out a hole for my window. All right. Let me do one more thing. Let me add a little chimney. Where do we want to add a chimney? I'm going to select my default plane here and essentially sketch a profile for a chimney. So I'm going to use a revolve tool to make my chimney. And so if you're using the revolve tool, typically what you need to sketch is half of the object, half of a sketch profile. So if I want my chimney to kind of have a vertical component and maybe a top component, it may look something like this. This is not my completed chimney. This is like my chimney, if I looked at it, sort of sliced in half. Let me click Finish Sketch. But then what we can do is then take that profile, use my Revolve tool, select an axis to rotate around. Oop, I don't want to cut that. I want to join that. Ooh, that might be too big. And I've got a shape that's, if I go back and edit this, might look more like a chimney. Put that a little bit taller. There we go. A lovely, amazing chimney. I bet you guys can do better. So for what it's worth, if you can practice using those basic tools, creating sketches, working with extrudes and revolves, you can quite literally make just about anything. So if you have not made your little house 3D model, try to get that done. All you got to do to turn that in is to take a screenshot of your window, paste that into the space provided, and you can, I think that's the last task where you have to make something in CAD for that assignment. If you take a look at this assignment, the last task is digging into some things that other people have made. And these are sites we'll use from time to time. If you've never explored these sites, they're great places to get started looking at what can be done with these types of CAD models. Thingiverse is kind of a go-to website for creating 3D models that are ready to be 3D printed. And you can see all kinds of creative and intricate, some of them relatively technically complicated designs. Again, all of these things were designed using CAD tools similar to Autodesk Fusion. GrabCAD is another website. It's got a bunch of 3D models. It's not strictly geared towards 3D printing. Includes a lot of engineered designs. You can check out and see what people are currently working on. Looks like we got some brake caliper designs, mounting brackets, wheels, furniture designs. Again, all of these things are things that can be created in Autodesk Fusion. Trace Parts is a nice website because they give you CAD models for actual parts and components used in production, and you might have to open that up on your computer because that's not opening on my computer. Useful website for pulling 3D models for industrial designs. And Yegi is another 3D printing resource that's got a lot of useful 3D models. So check those out, see what you can find, see if you can find something interesting that somebody else has created. So with that, I'm going to let you guys continue working. If you got questions about how to use this software, let me know. We are going to move forward tomorrow looking at how to do actual part design. So things are going to get a tad bit, slight bit, just a tiny bit more complicated. But keep working at it. You guys are making progress.